啲咩性格啊？開朗但係好 strong-willed，有自己嗰套。其實後生到而家都係㗎啦，就咩都唔驚咁咯，好似好大膽咁咯。唔係點解可能一個女人會逃亡翻去揾我爸啫？嗰陣時喺大陸佢爬山過嚟香港揾我爸。我覺得以佢嗰代人咧，佢識幾個字咧，佢就好自豪咯。佢識字咁咯。我睇小説咧，即係我睇書咧，都係受佢影響。啱過嚟英國嗰陣時，唔識講唔識聽，冇朋友，咁啊執嗰啲舊小説嚟睇咯。咁啊睇先有呢鋪睇書癮啫嘛。其實兩公婆都係啦，小人物喺個大時代，經過好多嘢，但係最後都係 OK 咯，即係一家人，大一家人咯。
Good afternoon and a warm welcome to Earlham as we gather to say goodbye to this remarkable woman who has lived through some major historical events that most of us can only read of in history books. Only for May, these were her reality. She was indeed an ordinary person who's lived through extraordinary times. It's almost impossible in the time we have here together to paint a portrait in words of this lady who's lived a long and remarkable life. And no picture, no matter how good, will ever be an accurate reflection to those of you who knew and loved her. We can only help sketch her picture and ask that you fill in the colours to complete her portrait with your own memories. May was born officially, if you're here, in China in 1938. In 1950, she volunteered to develop the wastelands of Hainan Island in the South China Sea. May was nothing if not intrepid, and in 1959 she climbed over the mountains to join her husband in Hong Kong, who had, the year before, swum over the border. The pair settled in the foothills of Tai Po and worked as subsistence farmers for some 5 years before moving on to the shanty town on the hillside of Chun Wan. 1967 saw May's husband move to the UK, and 3 years later she joined him. In 1972, the family was reunited when the couple's 3 youngest children joined their parents in the UK. Sadly, their eldest child was still in China, so was unable to join the rest of his family. This brief outline can never do justice to May's life, but I am privileged and honoured to share Nick's words, which no doubt adds so much colour to his mother's story. Nick tells us, my mother has gone through some major historical events from a first-person perspective. She had endured the ravages of 2 major wars during her formative years. The Second Sino-Japanese War, 1937 to 45, and the resumption of the Chinese Civil War in 1946 to 49. She had also experienced the seismic changes in Chinese society after the communist victory in 1949. Life was also hard as a refugee in Hong Kong during the 60s and in the early years of being a poor immigrant in a strange country during the 70s. As Nick said, despite all that, my mother was by nature optimistic, very self-confident and self-sufficient. She did not complain about her turbulent upbringing in China, nor the hard times in Hong Kong, but instead made the best of her situation to bring up her youngest 2 children who were living with her in Hong Kong. The third child, the second eldest, who was also born in China, only joined the family in the UK in 1972. Life in Hong Kong in the 60s was hard. Both she and my father had to declare that they were some 5 years younger in order to find work, and work they did. She and my father worked different shifts to ensure that there was always one of our parents there to look after my sister and me. Life in the UK during the early days was also hard. She started work as an unskilled kitchen porter in the UK only 2 days after she got off the plane. After we joined her in the UK in 1972, our family of 5 lived in a single room of not much more than 100 square feet for over 2 years. After spending the first 6 months at home to look after her, she had resumed work in the kitchen to help out with the family finances. The first years in the UK were unstable. Our family would move to seek better opportunities. And from 1972 to 1980, we lived in Kilburn in London, Mersham in Surrey, Witney in Oxfordshire, and then Norwich before settling for 5 years in King's Lynn, here in Norfolk. My mother moved back to Norwich to help me when I started a restaurant in 1985 and spent the rest of her years in a place which she could finally call home. Her last 37 years in Norwich were the most settled period of her life. During this time, she no longer had to worry where the next meal was coming from or whether the roof over her head would still be there in the morning. She's been affectionately known by her friends in Norwich as our poor Granny since the late 80s, probably due to her tendency to chat incessantly. The term stuck and became more apt as she aged. She valued her friends in Norwich and her independence. She refused my offer to move up north and live with me many times, saying that she didn't know anybody in Newcastle. All her friends were in Norwich, and that it would be like a prison if she were to move to another place. She was literate, which is unusual for a woman of her generation and socio-economic class. My passion for reading first developed when I read her old martial arts novels. Her one lifelong passion was mahjong, which she played as a pastime from her days in Hong Kong. Sadly, she had to give up the game for the past few years due to her declining eyesight. My mother has never achieved anything special during her life in the larger scheme of things. She has, however, raised a family in the most difficult of circumstances and overcome all the slings and arrows that life could throw at her. She will always be my beloved mum. I was glad I could spend the last 17 days of her life looking after her, and I was there, holding her hand and comforting her when she passed away peacefully. Thank you. And now some words from Tab.
我中文唔係好叻，不過我講幾句説話。我諗住我嘅阿婆多過你哋全部見。佢日日嚟，以前我哋有餐館，我哋細個佢啲餐館喺隔離叫長城樓，我哋香港樓，我哋同阿江仔即係玩到大嘅。咁佢哋買咗走咗，佢哋翻去傾星嗰時候，阿婆都留咗喺度，我哋咪招呼佢咯。佢日日嚟飲茶，日日嚟食，佢最中意係食。同埋佢好開朗，佢成日提佢嗰啲仔女，哇！我江仔幾叻啊！成日同我啲對，我老豆成日同佢嘈，我江仔最叻，李德文叻，成日喺度嘈，佢哋好中意嘈嘅，嘈到成個 Norwich 都知道佢哋嘈。不過始終我哋大家都係做好朋友，即係佢嗰啲孫女啊、孫仔啊，日日都提，哇！我個孫女好叻啊！我個孫仔有咩鉗山啊，我個孫女又識連衫啊，日日都提。咁呢幾年佢日日嚟香港嚟食包仔，哇，都好開心。我都同佢打過幾次麻雀，佢麻雀都好揦脷嘅。咁佢係一個女仔，我女人，不過佢個心都好似一個大男人咁嘅。She could have been a man. She was so powerful. 佢同你嘈交，你哋唔夠佢講㗎。哇！你想同佢嘈贏，成條街、成個 Norwich、成個街市都聽過你同佢嘈交，都嘈唔到贏佢。始終大家都嚟到都係佢朋友，我哋都照顧佢，佢都照顧過我哋，佢都好大方，又買咩俾我哋食，日日又帶嘢俾我仔食。哇！你仔中意食croissant，日日帶croissant俾我仔食。阿婆冇再帶嚟啦，佢夠啦，佢食唔晒，佢都要帶。佢個 knowledge， 我哋有咩事，我哋都問阿婆。阿婆邊個走咗要咩規矩啊？咩做咩啊？我哋要包咩禮啊？而家我哋都唔知問邊個。有咩病痛，我哋又問佢。搽咩藥水啊？阿婆食咩藥啊？我哋都揾阿婆。而家阿婆安樂晒㗎，希望佢去咗一個地方好安樂啊！佢而家生咗個仔女咁大，咁開心，大家都開心。就今日一個喜事。 我哋大家一齊先食餐飯，記住阿婆，thank you。
Oh, how I wish I knew what you said. And now a poem, A Mother's Love. A mother's love is something that no one can explain. It's made of deep devotion, of sacrifice and pain. It is endless and unselfish and enduring, come what may, for nothing can destroy it or take that love away. It is patient and forgiving when all others are forsaking, and it never fails or falters, even though the heart is breaking. It believes beyond believing when the world around condemns, and it glows with all the beauty of the rarest, brightest gems. It is far beyond defining. It defies all explanation, and it still remains a secret, like the mysteries of creation, a many splendid miracle man cannot understand, and another wondrous evidence of love's tender guiding hand. We now come to the part of the ceremony where we say goodbye. So please stand. As you bid May farewell, rejoice that you knew her. Be glad that you saw her smile and chatter and heard her laughter as you walked the paths of life with her. Treasure the memories of her stoicism and strength, her independence and optimism, her friendship and her love. With such sadness at her death, but with such respect and gratitude for the joy she brought into your lives and for the legacy she leaves you, we say thank you, May, our poor. Thank you for simply being you. May you rest forever in perfect peace, because whilst your bright shining star may have gone out in the world, it will never fade in the hearts and minds of all those who knew and loved you. Today we have spent just a little time remembering a life that has ended. Each of us is unique, and that's why we grieve. Look through the whole world and you'll never find another May. And although no longer a visible part of your lives, she will always be with you, this ordinary lady who lived through such extraordinary times, leaves an unforgettable treasure trove of memories that will echo down through the years to come. May time soften the pain until all that remains is the warmth of the memories and the love. Thank you, everyone, for being here today, and may you find peace and hope as you walk your life's path.
呢個 park 咧，佢又話成日嚟，佢俾電話我嗰陣時，佢話好天咧嚟，嗰實話嚟坐個零兩個鐘，我以為佢真係一個人喺度坐住，原來咧佢喺呢度食雪糕、食薯條，就同嗰個賣雪糕嗰個喺度傾嘅，有排傾偈嘅。